Hey guys, it's Ryan here and welcome to another episode of Blockchain Markets. So today I'm going to talk about security tokens. If security tokens are the new thing of crypto, if security tokens are the future of the crypto world or not. So let's begin. So before we start, as always, I'd like to ask you if you can, if you like my videos, to share them with other people so others can also know about cryptocurrencies and blockchain technology. So if you haven't subscribed to this channel, subscribe so you can get the next videos. We have a lot of new interviews with founders of crypto projects and blockchain projects. So you can subscribe and hit that bell button so you can get a notification as soon as the video is online. So today, as I said, I'm going to talk about security tokens. So what are security tokens, if they're interesting or not to look at, if it's something we should be scared of. So for that, I think we should start the conversation on the step before security tokens and how did we get there. So before security tokens, as you all know, everything started with Bitcoin in 2008 with the white paper, then afterwards and second the blockchain 2.0, if you will. It's Ethereum, where you could create that in that platform. You could issue tokens for the first time. Now, those tokens were all utility tokens, which means basically that, as the name says, it had some use. You would, in the case of Ether, which you would use Ether to pay for an ICO, for example. You would actually use that within the Ethereum platform. Same story with Cardano, same story with EOS. And all the other protocols that have been appearing later on. So those are the utility tokens. Now, so as you all know, or if you don't know, what happened after that is that there were a lot of scams also in the ICOs. So then the SEC in the States, the authorities, the financial authorities, started to look at those as actual securities. So a security, basically, when you think of a securities, think that it's an investment. Think of a stock, a bond, something that you can trade mainly with the intention to get a return on that investment. Theoretically, those protocols, those like Ethereum and the ones that I just mentioned, like Cardano, EOS, and Stellar, and others, those would create utility tokens, and then so then you wouldn't invest in them. I don't. You see where I'm getting. So then the idea was to actually use them, not to invest and hope that it would grow. Now, what really happened what happened in reality is that they grew, and they grew a lot. So then the SEC started to look at those, and then they said, well, guys, we see here a lot of, if you're going to create a project and you're going to raise a lot of money in an ICO, we want you to tell us if it's a utility or a security token. If it's a security token, now you have to follow all the rules that the financial authorities giving, so that framework that they have for any other company that wants to raise capital. So anybody that goes to start an IPO, an initial public offer in the States, that goes to the stock market, then they need to follow those rules. So in this case, some of them with an ICO were just bypassing the rules, and of course that's something that the SEC didn't like. So then they started to go after a few of the projects. So then that's the part that I want to discuss today, which is that bad or is that something good? For the purists and for the all-in Bitcoiners and only focused in crypto as a tech, it's a bad thing because they think that it's that now authorities are just trying to regulate the crypto market, which is something that they in the first place they of course didn't want to. That everything grew and Bitcoin grew. And Ethereum and all the rest grew as a way to bypass authority. Now, in reality of things is that the authorities will stay there always. And if you don't have anything to fear, why would you be so afraid of the financial authorities looking after these things? I think it's a good thing for two things. One, when there's no regulation at all, bad things happen. So we know that, for example, in just now for the ICOs, there's no regulation and a lot of scams happen. People just lose their money and sometimes they lose it all. Now you can argue that they were not cautious enough. Yeah, that's true, but that shouldn't happen. There should be a framework where you should feel safe where you invest your money. And so that's one thing. And then if we go back in time and then we look after before the crypto world, what happened when some markets were completely that has a name that I forgot now. It's like when the regulations just don't markets like the energy markets in the States, for example, that are deregulated. Sorry, when deregulation happened, so markets that used to be very heavily regulated, like the energy market in the States, all of a sudden, like 10 years ago, it was deregulated. So some bad things happened, and then you see some companies like Enron, for example. If you haven't seen the documentary or the movie about them, I suggest you see it. So basically, it's I think that regulation is not a bad thing, not a bad thing at all, especially if you see it from the point of view of an investor. Because when you're an investor, at the moment you invest, if you invest like me in cryptos, we both know that the level of penetration is really low. So then what I mean by that is that the volumes are really low. Not a lot of people know about this. And the big money stays in other places, hedge funds and pension funds and insurance companies, banks, of course, that's where the trillions are. Now, those guys cannot get into the crypto market now because it's not regulated. So they cannot invest in it. They have a lot of, they have to show the SEC that they're actually investing in a responsible way the money of the shareholders or the money of people that gave them the pensions. Sorry. So then they have to be responsible. Now, the moment that they have markets where they can start investing, the moment that everything is regulated, that money will start flooding in the crypto markets. And that's just a good thing. So that's what I want to say also, that the regulation is, from a capitalist point of view, it's a good thing. It's a good thing. Now, for a purely technologist, it's a bad thing. I don't think it's a bad thing either, but in their view, it is. So now I want to show you briefly part of the research that I've been doing about this, and then things that I found that I think are interesting. So if you see, for example, at the moment, we're very much still in the utility tokens era. Now, yesterday there was this, well, it was fake news, but everybody was a bit scared that the SEC would start conversations to see if Ethereum was or not a security. Now that, as I said, it was fake news, but anyway, the conversation started to happen, and there were a lot of people scared, and then the market went down. But now what I want to focus in this video, and what I want to discuss with you guys is, I think it's happened it's going to happen whether we want it or not, the regulation. So the thing is that as an investor, how do you position yourself in the best place so you can benefit in the best way possible when that actually happens? So if we start thinking at what will happen when regulation starts. So what will happen is that other markets outside of cryptocurrencies will be tokenized. Now, what other things can you tokenize? Well, you can tokenize your house. You can sell 10% of your house. Let's say you rent your house with let's say you have one room that you rent using a service like Airbnb, and then you want to get a bit of liquidity of that. You don't want to sell your house, but you want to get some money. Let's say your house is 100,000 euros or dollars, or that, let's put a higher number. So let's say 300,000, and then you want to tokenize 10%, so 30,000. You want to get 30,000, but in the real world you cannot sell 10% of your house. So with a tokenized system, what you can do is you can tokenize 10% of your house or more, or the percentage you want, and then with that you can put it in the market and then trade that. So and then for that, if you see, you're gonna need different players. So you're gonna need one, which is the platform that allows you to tokenize, so the software that allows you to tokenize your physical assets. Now we said we talked about real estate, which is I think the no-brainer example. But there are other examples like that have low liquidity, like early stage startups, for example, VCs that invest in those early stage startups. They usually get their money within 5 to 10 years out. So then it's a long time. So if they have some need for some cash in between, they could tokenize that business or part of that business and then sell it in the market, and then get some money in the short term before the 5 years. So if we see at the chain of who will be involved, let's do a parallel with the blockchain world. Now, in this blockchain-driven world and crypto world, you have the platform like Ethereum, where you can create everything on top, like the dApps. You can issue tokens as well. So who will be, and then you issue the token, and then you have to trade it on an exchange, and then the whole loop is closed. So let's do that, and let's use that same example to see what would happen in a more outside of in the securities tokenization world. So who would be the Ethereum, the platform where you can create where you can issue tokens? There is one which is called, if you see here, Polymath. Now you can go to their website later on, but you can see that Polymath is still relatively small for what I think it could be. It's not even 200 million in coin market cap, but Polymath is basically, I'm going to go to the website because I think the first phrase they say what it is exactly. Now it's a bit slow because I'm recording. Yeah, so basically it's Polymath is the securities token platform that enables trillions of dollars. So the trillions of dollars that I was talking about, like these big fishes in the pension funds, insurance companies, banks, they enable those trillions of dollars of securities to migrate to the blockchain. So this is the aiming to be the Ethereum of the security tokens. So okay, then we have the platform. Now, how do you create actually the tokens? Now you have some companies like Securitize, for example, and that will allow you to tokenize a fund, to tokenize a company, or tokenize any other asset like a real estate asset. So in this case, I believe this is a company that was Securitas itself. It's not a token, but I think they're part of what was the name of the company? Let's see, Spice VC. So you can check Spice VC, and they invest in blockchain projects. They created this platform where you can create, you can tokenize your assets. So you can digitalize your assets if they are not digital, and you can tokenize them if they're already digital. So they're very good because this is a question I had also at the beginning. I thought, why would I tokenize something? What's the point? So they break it down in 4 different different aspects. So one is the liquidity, what I just said, that you can, it says traditionally illiquid assets can increase their liquidity on the blockchain. So traditional illiquid asset, like really small business or a private business or a real estate can now be tokenized. Scalability, every crypto wallet holder can participate subject to regulations, and inclusivity. So now all not just big investors, but also small investors can invest in a company. If you think, for example, I'm in Amsterdam, and if I want to invest, maybe there's a very good opportunity, let's say, like 5 years ago, for example, NVIDIA, which is a company that you can check it has grown a lot. Tech company that does more than the chips for all the Apple products. They grew a lot, but I had no chance to invest in them because they were trading. They were in the Nasdaq, and then I can only use my national Dutch broker to go through them, and then they offer me just the big blue chips in the States. So I couldn't go for the small ones. Now with this part inclusivity, I could go, and if a small business in Ohio, for example, if it's a small brewery that is growing a lot, and then I analyze that business and I want to be part of that, at the moment there's no way I can invest in them. Now if they decide to tokenize that company, I could actually become a shareholder. And that's really fascinating. So that it allows you to take out all the intermediaries and then the intermediates, the middlemen, and then go straight to them. So let's go back, and then this is a way you would create a token in Polymath. You can do that as well. And you will need a place where you need to start trading those tokens. So this is one called T0. There's another one that I just wrote somewhere here. Let's say if I just kept it, but there's another one. I think it's no, I cannot find it now, but I'll just mention it in another video. This is the main one. Is T0, which will become, I think, kind of the Binance or Bittrex, Poloniex of the crypto as we know now. So they would be like the equal for the security tokens. And this is quite a very interesting project, because then they will basically, they think that they could replace the entire Wall Street only by this. Why? Because they will use blockchain technology. So then by that you eliminate all the middlemen, which is in Wall Street. It's a big part of all the money that they make there is made by collecting fees from seller and buyer. So then if you don't know, for example, all those big banks, and investment banks and brokers, that's the way they make money. They just collect from here and from there, from seller and buyer, and they don't care if the stock goes up or down, or the bond or the option or whatever they sell. They just don't care. They just collect the Wall Street is a business of fees. It's not a business of if the market is going up. And that's something that you should really understand. So this T-Series is just finishing now the sale, the private sale. That it was only sold to private and accredited investors, and then if you want to invest in them anyway, it is an ERC20 token, so I think it should be in the decentralized in Ether Delta or in IDEX pretty soon once they release the token, so you can invest on that. And then I think they will become the exchange, one of the biggest exchange, if not the biggest, in the security tokens world. Now it's backed up by George Soros, which is one of the biggest investors in the world. Big part of Wall Street now is betting against Wall Street, which is something really cool. And it's owned by the company called Overstock. For the ones that are not in America, the Overstock is a company that it's an online retailer that decided to start accepting Bitcoins a while ago, and in that sense was quite unique. But even though there was not part of they didn't make much money out of that, only like 2% or 0.2 actually of their overall revenues came through Bitcoins. But the CEO wanted his team to get to grips with the technology, with the blockchain and Bitcoin. So that's the way they started, and then they decided to launch T-Series now. So we have now the platforms where you could create the tokens, issue the tokens, which will something like Polymath, for example. Then you need other people that would lend you money to invest, so you can use your cryptos and invest in other cryptos or in securitized tokens. For that, you have something like Nexo. There will be more coming. Now Nexo is very hyped at the moment. For full disclosure, I have purchased coins of Polymath and Nexo as well, because I believe in them, and I'm planning to do the same with the T-Series as long as the ERC20 token is released. So those then you have like the ecosystem, and then I think what will happen is that a lot of these new businesses, people will start tokenizing the stuff or the businesses on top of platforms like Polymath. Now there will be others, of course, but this is the first one that I could find. So that's it, guys. If you have any questions, if you think that this is in the future also, please say it in the comments. If you have any other, if you want me to cover any of these tokens or another cryptocurrency that you can think of, just let me know in the comment section, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.